Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. And joining me, of course, every night is Miss CJ Hero. Hello, CJ.
Hello, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining us tonight. Here are the top headlines.
At least 7 people were killed Tuesday, most of them children, in a shooting at a high school in the central Russian city of Kazan.
The Philippines reported Tuesday its first 2 cases of the COVID-19 variant, first found in India.
Israel and Hamas exchanged fire with 22 Palestinians killed in Gaza, including children, in a dramatic escalation between the bitter foes sparked by unrest at Jerusalem's flashpoint Al-Aqsa Mosque compound.
And the United States authorizes the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for children aged 12 to 15 years old, while in India, the devastating outbreak rages on.
On our news tonight, at least 7 people were killed, most of them children, in a shooting at a high school in the central Russian city of Kazan. Russia's investigation committee has opened a criminal case in response. Take a look.
По факту нападения на гимназию в Казани, в результате которого погибли несколько человек, в том числе дети, Следственным управлением по Республике Татарстан возбуждено уголовное дело по статье Уголовного кодекса, предусматривающей ответственность за убийство 2 и более лиц общеопасным способом.
Now, officials said at least 1 gunman had been involved and detained, though there were unconfirmed reports of 2 attackers, including 1 who had been killed. A police spokesman said officers were dispatched to school number 175 in Kazan, the capital of the Russian Republic of Tatarstan, after reports of shots being fired. Russia's National Anti-Terrorism Committee said 7 children had been killed, 16 people wounded. The mayor of Kazan said 8 people had been killed, while Russian news agencies, citing official sources, said 11 people had died. Now, there were initial reports of 2 shooters, with 1 reportedly barricaded on the 4th floor of the building and killed, but officials later said a lone attacker had been responsible. The investigative committee, which probes major crimes in Russia, said a local resident born in 2001 had been detained in connection with this attack. Tatarstan regional leader Rustam Minikhanov arrived at the scene and entered the school after it had been declared secure by law enforcement. And he described the detained assailant as a terrorist and said the 19-year-old shooter had a license to carry a firearm.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin said Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday ordered a review of gun control legislation following a deadly shooting at a high school in the central city of Kazan. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters that the president gave an order to urgently work out a new provision concerning the types of weapons that can be in civilian hands, taking into account the weapon used in the attack. The alleged perpetrator survived the incident and has been detained by police. Tatarstan's president Rustam Minikhanov told the Russia 24 rolling news channel that they've lost 7 children, 8th grade students, 4 boys and 3 girls. They died on the 3rd floor, and 16 more people are now in hospital. The terrorist was arrested. He is 19 years old. No weapons are officially registered to him, and no other accomplices have been identified. Authorities confirmed later on Tuesday that 1 attacker had been detained, a 19-year-old man with a registered firearm. A second was initially said to have been, or to have still been, engaged in a standoff with police inside the school, but officials have since said that the teenager is thought to have acted alone.
In today's other news, violence again exploded between Israelis and Palestinians. Israel and Hamas exchanged heavy fire on Tuesday with 22 Palestinians killed in Gaza, including children, in a dramatic escalation between the bitter rivals, sparked by unrest at Jerusalem's flashpoint Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Local health authorities said 9 children were among those killed in the blockaded Gaza Strip that is controlled by the Islamist movement, and 106 people there were wounded. More than 200 rockets have been fired by Palestinian militants towards Israel since Monday, with over 90% intercepted by its Iron Dome missile defense system. According to Army spokesman Jonathan Conricus, at least 6 Israelis have been injured. Israel has responded with 130 strikes carried out by fighter jets and attack helicopters on military targets in the enclave, killing 15 commanders from Hamas and of the group Islamic Jihad. Now, tensions in Jerusalem have flared into the city's worst disturbances since 2017, since Israeli riot police clashed with large crowds of Palestinian worshippers on the last Friday of the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan.
Now, the Philippines reported Tuesday its first 2 cases of the COVID-19 variant first found in India. The World Health Organization has classified that variant of the virus, known as a B1617, as a variant of global concern, with some preliminary studies showing that it spreads more easily. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeira said the 2 individuals infected with COVID-19 variant from India are both male overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs. One of the 2 patients is a 37-year-old OFW from Oman, while the other one is a 58-year-old OFW from the United Arab Emirates. Dr. Atletea de Guzman, director of the Department of Health's Epidemiology Bureau, said the 2 B1617 variant infected OFWs have no close contacts and already recovered from the coronavirus disease. Roque said the country has not reported community transmission of the new variant from India. The Philippine government has imposed travel restrictions on travelers from India until May 14 to prevent the entry of the new variant that is responsible for New Delhi's worst coronavirus outbreak. The Philippines has expanded the coverage of the travel ban by also prohibiting travelers from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka to enter the country until May 14. The Indian subcontinent covers India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Bhutan, and the island nations of Sri Lanka and Maldives.
Meanwhile, WHO's technical lead for COVID-19, Maria Van Kerkhove, said it is reclassifying the highly contagious triple mutant COVID variant spreading in India as a variant of concern at the global level. Let's listen in.
Is some available information to suggest increased transmissibility of B1617. There is a preprint that is out. So this is a paper that has not undergone peer review, and it's of a limited number of patients, suggesting that there is some reduced neutralization. And as such, we are classifying this as a variant of concern at the global level.
Now, it will be added to the list containing 3 other variants of COVID-19, those first detected in Britain, Brazil, and South Africa, which the WHO has classified as being of concern, and they are seen as more dangerous than the original version of the virus by being more transmissible, deadly, or able to get past vaccine protections.
Back here in the country, a total of 7,837 patients have recovered from COVID-19, raising the country's overall recovery to 1,030,000. 38,175 as of today. In its latest case bulletin, the Department of Health said those who have beaten the illness account for 93.2% of the Philippines' total case tally, which has reached 1,113,547. The number of new infections recorded today dropped to 4,734, bringing the total active case tally to 56,752. Meanwhile, 59 new deaths increased the country's death toll to 18,620. The DOH said about 93.4% of the active cases are mild, 2.2% are asymptomatic, 1.8% are severe, 1.17% are moderate, and 1.4% are in critical condition.
And staying in the country, the vaccination rollout gains full steam as the Philippines is now second among Southeast Asian nations with the most number of virus vaccines administered. Now, in a report by National Task Force Against COVID-19, Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar, Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. He said that the data shows that as of May 10, the country has administered a total of 2,409,235 vaccine shots, more than 2 months after it started its vaccination campaign. Take a look.
Kung titingnan po natin, noon dati po, nasa pangatlo po tayo. Ngayon po, mahal na President, number 2 na po tayo. Dahil umangat po ang ating daily average. Noon dati po, ang daily average po natin is only 34,418. Sa ngayon po, yung 7 average po natin, ang last 7 average from May 1 to May 8, tumaas na po tayo, nadoblado po tayo ng 65,879. So nakakatuwa po dahil kasi talagang na tumataas na po tayo. And then number 41st na po tayo out of 94 countries and rank 15 out of 47 countries in Asia.
The Philippines' first batch of 193,050 doses of Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines donated through the World Health Organization-led COVAX facility arrived last night. Take a look.
Merong indemnification fund na pinrovide ng batas natin at yung mga issues on indemnification na naging source ng pag-uusap ng Pfizer at ng Philippine government ay naresolve na. Kaya ngayon, nandito na ang Pfizer.
Just the start of a new chapter, in our fight together against COVID.
According to the Department of Health, the first batch of Pfizer vaccines will be distributed in COVID-19 high-risk areas within Metro Manila, Cebu, and Davao. The newly arrived vaccines were immediately transported to the PharmaServe Express cold chain storage facility in Marikina City. The Pfizer vaccine requires a temperature at -80 degrees Celsius to -60 degrees Celsius prior to dilution.
Now, President Duterte on Monday night also said he could not let his guard down despite the drop in daily COVID infections, reminding barangay officials to enforce community quarantine guidelines in their respective jurisdictions or face liability. Take a look.
Kaya ang barangay captain, you are called upon and will be held liable for the failure of implementing the law in your territory. Yan o kasi magsabi, bakit bigay sa amin yan? Anak ng, hindi ninyo alam, yan. That is the reason why you have to enforce the law. Yung barangay captains sa iyong lugar mo, you are the person in authority.
Ang ating pong PNP at ang LGU ng Caloocan City ay nagsasagawa na po ng pag-file ng mga kaso sa mga violators, kasama po yung owner ng syudad, ng gubat sa Syudad Resort at ang pag-summon at pag-aresto po sa barangay captain ng barangay 171 Caloocan City sapagkat hindi niya naipatupad ang community health.
In photos that went viral on social media, crowds were seen bathing in the resort that was supposed to be closed during the celebration of Mother's Day on Sunday. As persons in authority, the president said they had the responsibility to make sure that community quarantine regulations are enforced as part of efforts to curb the spread of the virus. He also said barangay officials who failed to enforce the law should be punished, especially since their negligence could resort to an increase in COVID cases in the country.
Meanwhile, the UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, said a new wave of COVID-19 infections is spreading like wildfire across India, leaving many youngsters destitute. Watch this.
UNICEF, of course, is very concerned about this deadly daily surge in new cases. The wave is almost 4 times the size of the first wave, and the virus is spreading much faster. On an average, there were more than 4 new cases every second and more than 2 deaths every minute in the last 24 hours. What is happening in India should raise alarm bells for all of us. The pandemic is far from over. COVID-19 cases are rising at an alarming rate across South Asia, especially in Nepal, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. On the numbers of children directly affected by the virus, we aren't seeing yet any indication that the proportion is any different to what we saw in the first wave. However, the numbers are far greater. We've seen the virus entering a household. It just takes one member in the household to be affected, and it seems to spread like wildfire throughout the family.
UNICEF is also concerned that the COVID-19 surge has also led to dire consequences for a greater number of children than during the first wave of infections, with access to essential health, social protection, and education services constrained.
In other news, the Food and Drug Administration said that children 12 to 15 years old are now eligible to receive a key COVID-19 vaccine as the agency expanded its emergency use authorization for the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Until now, the Pfizer vaccine had been authorized only for people aged 16 and older. Meanwhile, New York State became the latest to mandate that students at publicly funded colleges be vaccinated for the US's fall term. Take a look.
If you must have a vaccine, get it now, if you have to get it anyway. I also encourage private schools to do the same thing.
Officials face a challenge convincing the reluctant to get inoculated to reach the threshold for societal immunity. Governments and businesses have rolled out a number of incentives like free tickets for sporting events. The course of the disease is generally milder in children, but they can become seriously ill and even spread the virus. Pfizer and its partner BioNTech said in March that their 2-dose vaccine regimen was shown to be safe and highly effective in a trial of 2,260 12 to 15-year-olds. Meanwhile, all 3 makers of U.S.-authorized vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, are studying the safety and effectiveness of their vaccines in children, including as young as 6 months.
In other news, Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin said Muslim-majority Malaysia will tighten coronavirus curbs across the whole country ahead of the Eid al-Fitr holiday as cases spiral. The move comes after authorities declared a slew of curbs limiting movement and social events in many places across Malaysia recently, including a partial lockdown in the capital. The new curbs, Muhyiddin said, will kick in on Wednesday, a day before the country celebrates Eid al-Fitr, and remain until June 7. While all sectors of the economy are allowed to carry on, social events such as feasts, house visits, and wedding receptions will be banned during this time. People will also not be allowed to cross state or district borders, and not more than 50 will be allowed inside large mosques or more than 20 for smaller ones for special Eid prayers. Schools and universities will also be closed except for those sitting for international exams, though child care centers and kindergartens will be allowed to open. The regular spike in infections and the arrival of virus variants, such as from South Africa and India, has worried health officials as the number of available beds and ventilators start to run out.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. The Philippine economy shrank at a slower pace in the first quarter of the year by 4.2% and is expected to stage a recovery in the next quarters, despite the re-imposition of stricter quarantine measures in Metro Manila and other provinces. The Philippine Statistics Authority on Tuesday reported that the country's gross domestic product, or GDP, posted a smaller contraction in the first 3 months of the year compared to an 8.3% decline in the fourth quarter of 2020 that resulted in the minus 9.5% growth rate last year. Take a look.
The priorities in the final year of the administration are as follows. We are working closely with Congress to enact 12 important measures by June of 2021. The Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, or LEDAC-EXECOM, has agreed on a common legislative agenda. And of that long list, there are 12 priority measures targeted to be passed by June 2021 or before the adjournment of this session. Our recovery is slated starting this year, and we would achieve pre-pandemic level in 2022, middle of 2022. And all of these are needed to prevent long-term scarring and productivity losses. The Development Budget and Coordination Committee has approved a 6.5 to 7.5% growth this year and up to 10% growth in 2022. Although the recent imposition of ECQ and MECQ may lower our growth estimate, but we are still early in the year and there is ample opportunity to catch up. And the enablers of our recovery are along 3 pillars. The first is the safe reopening of the economy once the spike is over, managing the risk better instead of having everyone put in quarantine when we can target the areas of highest risk. The second one is the timely implementation of our recovery package. And the third one is the timely implementation of our vaccination program. These are the achievements in the first 5 years of the administration and our program of priority for the remaining year.
Secretary Chua also said growths of exports and manufacturing have turned positive and created a net of 2.8 million jobs, indicating a direction of an improvement in the economy.
Now, China's population has grown at its slowest pace in decades, reaching 1.41 billion, census results showed on Tuesday, highlighting fears of a looming crisis over an aging society. Watch this.
我国少儿人口比重回升，反映了生育政策调整取得积极成效。同时，人口老龄化程度进一步加深，未来一段时期将面临人口长期持续发展的压力。
The growth of 5.4% was the slowest since the 1960s, due in part to falling birth rates and a sharp drop in the number of working-age people. After decades of a controversial one-child policy, Beijing in 2016 allowed families to have 2 children as fears grew about China's shrinking workforce. But it is yet to produce the expected baby boom to help offset the country's aging population. Falling marriage rates in recent years have impacted on birth rates as well as rising costs, plus women naturally delaying or avoiding childbirth due to their growing empowerment. The commissioner also said the coronavirus pandemic had also slowed birth rates.
Cali residents formed long queues at petrol stations while supermarket shelves are near empty as the southwestern Colombian city feels the effect of continuing unrest. Many roads leading to the city are blocked as part of ongoing protests against the government of President Ivan Duque that began on April 28. Let's take a look.
Opino que el paro nacional debe de hacerse de una forma pacífica, pero esto se salió de control. Obviamente hay que protestar por todas las inconsistencias que hay, pero no estoy de acuerdo con el vandalismo que se ha suscitado, con quemar los carros, con dañar los negocios, porque el mismo pueblo es el que se está viendo afectado.
Bastante crítica porque no hay alimentos en las tiendas, ya en la galería también ya todo se ha agotado y pues estamos pasando es con lo que se logra comprar ahí en la tienda, pero a un precios exagerados.
Sí, hasta Jardín Plaza hay movimiento en las calles.
The Colonial Pipeline, the largest oil pipeline in the eastern United States, has only partially reopened after a ransomware attack forced its shutdown. Jim Crane, an energy research fellow at Rice University, warns of potential storage issues in Texas and fuel shortages in the Northeast following that incident. Take a look.
Most of the refineries in America are here on the Gulf Coast in southeast Texas and in Louisiana. And so this is where the oil comes to be processed and turned into gasoline, diesel fuel, heating oil. And then we send it from here through various means up to the East Coast and to the Northeast. Colonial Pipeline is the biggest one of those transport routes. It takes about 2.7 million barrels a day of refined products from Texas to the Northeast. Will run out of storage if the pipeline stays closed. So the price of oil here in Texas could drop because of this oversupply, right? At the same time, storage tanks in the Northeast at the other end of the pipeline are being drawn down. And if that imbalance continues, if we have the supply rise in Texas and this drop in New Jersey and New York, et cetera, prices there are going to go way up. They're going to have fuel shortages. Prices here are going to go down, and we're going to have a supply glut. I think it's a sign of that there's a lot more work to be done on securing the critical infrastructure from penetration from the internet, right? I mean, these SCADA systems that are used to run industrial systems should not have a connection to the internet. And how that happened this time around, I think people will be looking to find out and prevent from happening again.
Colonial Pipeline said Monday it had begun a phased restart of a giant U.S. gasoline pipeline and hopes to restore operations by the end of the week. The company said it was the victim of a cybersecurity attack involving ransomware, attacks that encrypt computer systems and seek to extract payments from operators. The affected pipeline ships gasoline and jet fuel from the Gulf Coast of Texas to the populous East Coast through 5,500 miles of conduit, serving 50 million consumers.
In the related news, U.S. President Joe Biden said there is no evidence of Russian government involvement in the cyber attack on a U.S. fuel pipeline, but says there are indications the ransomware is in Russia. Take a look.
I'm going to be meeting with President Putin, and so far there is no evidence based on from our intelligence people that Russia is involved. Although there is evidence that the actors, ransomware, is in Russia, they have some responsibility to deal with this.
Well, Russia on Tuesday rejected those accusations that a Russia-based group was behind the ransomware attack that forced the shutdown of the largest oil pipeline in the eastern United States. The Russian embassy in the U.S. said in a statement that they categorically reject the baseless fabrications of individual journalists and reiterate that Russia does not conduct malicious activity in the virtual space. The FBI identified the group behind the hack of Colonial Pipeline as Dark Side. Dark Side began attacking medium and large-size companies, mostly in Western Europe, Canada, and the U.S. last year, reportedly asking for anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1 million to be paid in Bitcoin. And in return, DarkSide supplies the company with a program that will unlock its computing systems.
In other news, Australia unveils free spending budget amid COVID and closed borders. Australian Treasurer Josh Frydenberg delivers his budget speech to the Australian Parliament in Canberra, unveiling a free spending, crisis-tinged budget. Frydenberg said the continuation of the country's roaring economic recovery depended on effective suppression of the virus. To that end, he said, the Conservative government expected Australia's borders to remain closed well into 2022. Take a look.
On the health front, the catastrophic loss of life seen elsewhere has been averted. Early and decisive action saved lives and livelihoods. We closed our borders. The Prime Minister established the National Cabinet. And unprecedented support is seeing the country through the biggest global economic shock since the Great Depression. Our plan is working. Australia's economic engine is roaring back to life.
Eagle News will be back with more updates. Please don't go away.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
A tiny Italian island is being overwhelmed by migrants. Lampedusa is located in the Mediterranean Sea between Malta and Tunisia, 105 miles southwest of Licata, Sicily. It's only about 8 square miles in size. More than 2,100 migrants have reached the shores in 24 hours, including 635 who landed yesterday. Take a look.
5.5 million of refugees and IDPs are in the Sahel countries. So what we see here in Italy is just the tip of the iceberg. The latest disembarkation, in any case, brings the number of sea arrivals to Italy in 2021 to 10,400. This is more than a 170% increase compared to 2020. Also, UNHCR is deeply concerned about the death toll. So far in 2021, at least 500 persons are known to have lost their life trying to make the sea crossing in the Central Med. In 2020, there were 150 in this period of the year. So we have an increase of 200%.
The stretch of water between Sicily and North Africa is also one of the world's deadliest migration routes. Numerous charity ships operate in the area trying to save those who end up in the water after crossing in packed or leaky boats. And some activists accuse authorities of letting them down. But the NGOs in turn have faced accusations of colluding with Libyan migrant traffickers to bring people to safety on European shores, charges they strongly deny.
In other news, the U.S. Navy said it seized a ship carrying a huge cache of illicit Russian and Chinese weapons in international waters of the North Arabian Sea. The USS Monterey intercepted a stateless vessel as part of an ongoing mission. There, they discovered a huge cache of weapons, which included almost 3,000 Chinese-made assault rifles and dozens of Russian-manufactured anti-tank guided missiles. The U.S. Navy said the arms are in U.S. custody now, and their source and intended destination is under investigation. Based on interviews with the crew and material investigated on board, the sailors determined the vessel came from Iran and may have been delivering the weapons to Houthi rebels in Yemen. Iranian officials did not respond. Iran has denied providing the Houthis with weapons in the past. Yemen's civil war, which began in 2014, has long been seen as a proxy struggle between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which backs the Yemeni government.
In other headlines, Scotland's National Party won control of Parliament in final votes tallies yesterday, and the party's leader said she will push for a second referendum on independence. Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's First Minister, said the election result showed Scotland's independence from the United Kingdom is, quote, the will of the country. Take a look.
We don't know the final tally of seats right now. It looks as if it is beyond any doubt that there will be a pro-independence majority in that Scottish Parliament. And by any normal standard of democracy, that majority should have the commitments it made to the people of Scotland honoured.
Scotland, Wales, England, and Northern Ireland make up the United Kingdom. In the first independent referendum back in 2014, Scots voted to remain part of the UK by 55 to 45%. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said on Saturday that the SNP's aim of a second referendum was, quote, irresponsible and reckless, while he wrote a public letter to Sturgeon asking her to work together in Team UK.
Rescuers work to free a small whale believed to be a minke whale that has been trapped on the boat rollers at Richmond Lock, West London, as crowds watch the operation along the riverbank. Watch this.
After more than a month of steady effusions of lava, the eruption near Fragrad's Fall in the Reykjanes Peninsula in southwest Iceland is behaving like a geyser, with periods of lulling between high lava fountains, even visible from the capital 30 kilometers away. Take a look.
Actually, it's pretty hard to describe because in pictures or in movies you can't really feel the warmth of the volcano. It's amazing how warm it is, even it's so many meters away from here. The sounds, it's absolutely intense experience. The colors, the warmth, the sound, everything combined. It's unbelievable, actually.
Back here in the Philippines, PHIVOLCS on Monday evening, May 11, raised the status of Mount Bulusan to alert level 1 as the active volcano in Sorsogon manifested a low-level unrest. In an advisory on Monday night, PHIVOLCS said 62 volcanic earthquakes were recorded since May 7. It said these earthquakes are caused by movements or eruptions of magma from the volcano compared to tectonic quakes, which are caused by fault movements. A steady inflation of the upper slopes of the edifice that began last March 6 was recorded. Entry into the 4-kilometer radius permanent danger zone should be prohibited, PHIVOLCS reminds the public and local government units. Pilots must also be advised to avoid flying close to the volcano summit, as ash from any sudden phreatic eruption can be hazardous to aircraft.
And in NBA action, Sunday afternoon's NBA action includes Derrick Rose delivering off the bench with 25 points to carry the New York Knicks to a 106-100 victory against the LA Clippers. And Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat hold off the Boston Celtics 130-124. Derrick Rose played like an MVP off the bench, scoring 25 points. More from Tenny Sumagi.
Derrick Rose played like an MVP, scoring 25 points off the bench to give the Knicks the victory over the Clippers in Sunday's matinee. New York is eyeing to make the playoffs for the first time in 7 years.
The heart of the team has been special from the beginning, so there's an appreciation for that. And as you mentioned, the challenge for us is to be hungry and don't change now. This is what we've done all year. Just concentrate on improvement in the next opponent, and that's what we're looking forward to doing. I think we're learning a lot on this trip, and we've learned a lot all season long as the season has progressed. And the toughness, to win on the road, to be playing against these teams, it's telling us a lot, but there's still a long way to go.
As long as we're all out there communicating and having one common goal, everything should take care of itself, and hustling and playing for each other, everything should be good. But, that would be big. But at the same time, we know that Tibbs always talk about finishing, going through the finish line. And we got to do our jobs by making sure that we're sharp, making sure that we got keen type of focus, and just knowing that we're playing for each other. So it's all about just winning games.
Jimmy Butler scored 26 points to help the Heat hold off the Celtics' late fourth quarter surge. The Heat are trying to earn a playoff spot and avoid the first league's play-in tournament.
I mean, it always feels great to win. We take no wins lightly here. They're hard to come by in this league, especially against a really good team like Boston. It's going to be a completely different game, though. I'll tell you that on Tuesday. They're probably going to have Jalen back, and he's a huge difference maker for them. But I don't think that we close the game the way that we're supposed to or capable of either. So at the same time, we got to be better.
Good to see how much he settles our team, offensively when, they were making a run in the fourth quarter, and you have to expect, games to be a full 48 minutes. And they made a great push, but we were able to, get the ball to Jimmy, kind of get to our spots, and just play off of his decision making, and that just gives your team, an incredible amount of confidence, going down the stretch in close games.
Tune into Eagle News for more stories and highlights on the NBA throughout the season. In New York, Tenny Sumagi, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thank you so much, Tenny. And finally, in our news, hoping to prove a cut above the competition, Pakistani barber Ali Abbas relies on an unusual array of tools to practice his craft, including blow torches, meat cleavers, and even broken glass. Watch this.
नहीं ये आइडिया मैं एक दिन इसको मैं यूं कह लूं कि ये मजाक नहीं था ये मैं सोच रहा था मैं कुछ डिफरेंट करूं क्योंकि मेरी शुरू से ही मुझ में एक ये चीज़ रही है कि मैं कुछ नया करूं कुछ डिफरेंट करूं
इस तरह की कोई फीलिंग्स नहीं आती स्किन से बहुत दूर होती है आग बस बालों के ऊपर लगी होती है तो बहुत अच्छा फील होता है
बिल्कुल भी डर नहीं लगता बिकॉज टोके से कटिंग करवाने से बाल जो हैं वो कैंची से कटवाने से ज़्यादा ग्रो करते हैं सो इसलिए मैं टोके से कटिंग करवाना ज़्यादा प्रेफर करती हूँ और मैं अब यूज्ड टू हो चुकी हूँ और मैं बहुत ज़्यादा एंजॉय करती हूँ
जब से मैंने ये काम शुरू किया ना इसके बाद क्लाइंट्स बढ़ गए हैं लोगों का एतमाद बढ़ गया और जब आप किसी भी प्लेटफॉर्म पे नज़र आ रहे होते हैं ना लोगों को तो लोग कहते हैं कि नहीं यार हम इसको ट्राई करना चाहते हैं हमें इसको ट्राई करना चाहिए
No, it's a no for me.
I wonder what he does
with his bear. You know, I have trust issues, and I will never pay anyone to play with knives and fires around me.
Oh,
no.
yeah.
But good for him. He's getting a lot of customers since he started that new style of cutting hair. Not for me,
Very
though.
unusual.
But, yeah, but kudos to you. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us again tomorrow. I'm CJ Hero.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.